Hello everyone, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program with me, the MagicNateball. When we last left, we were launching a rocket. We launched one and we got out of the atmosphere. We did not manage to make a stable orbit, so that's going to be our goal for today. We'll go ahead and start by hopping into the vehicle assembly building, and if it's not already loaded, which it probably won't be, we'll load up our rocket we had yesterday. So you can see it does auto-save a ship if you leave and launch the ship, or whatever happens if you leave the vehicle assembly building. It will auto-save the ship you had as you left the building. So if you forgot to save it, it'll still be there until you do another one. So keep that in mind. So we'll load up the YouTube tester. And what we noticed last time is we definitely weren't paying enough attention. We could have got this rocket into orbit last time, or at least very close. This time we're going to be a little more efficient with it, perhaps. The first thing we're going to do is, last time we noticed we don't have a decoupler here. We don't have any way to land just the pod where we want to land it at. So first thing we want to do, we're going to detach this and just set it right there for now. I'm going to raise this up by clicking on it, and then we'll just scroll the mouse wheel up to raise the camera, and that'll move it up for us. Now we'll go over here to structural, and now I have a ton of extra structural stuff from my mod pack, so you won't have a whole lot of this stuff as you might see here. You will have all this stuff, however, and this is what we're looking for. It's stacked decoupler. And this essentially is exactly what it sounds like. It decouples the stack from whatever it's pointing at. So you can see this arrow is pointing this way, so it means that this will stay attached to this stage and everything above this line will be detached, which is awesome. It definitely helps. Now we have our decoupler that we needed. The next thing, we could have used maybe a little bit more fuel. Don't mind my phone going off over there, and give me over and excuse me while I go ahead and silence that if anything else decides to happen. Okay, now sorry for that there interruption. Now the next thing we need to do, as I said, we kind of seemed like we may have needed a little bit more fuel, or maybe we could have used a little bit more propulsion at launch so we could have saved some of this fuel. So we're gonna add some extra boosters to this because it looks cool. We could do a separate stage. We could make this taller, or we could make it wider by adding engines out from the center. We're gonna go old school, I think. We're gonna make this a multi-stage vertical rocket. So let's just move this up. Now, this will be our final stage. This will be the what we actually attempt to put into orbit. Now, it might need some power because we're going to have this powered up the whole time, and this doesn't have a whole lot of power storage. So we're not going to leave this in orbit forever. We're really just going to be putting it up there for a minute. So we don't need a whole lot of power storage. So we're just going to come over here to these rechargeable battery packs, and this will give us enough power storage. We won't need any actual power generation structures. You can add solar panels, you can add different sorts of generators, but we're just going to stick with these batteries. Now over here, I didn't explain this last time. Excuse me. I didn't explain this last time. This is the symmetry mode. This is where you can add more than one copy of an item on different sides. So right now it's in one, so I just add one of these. Now I could move it up to, like, let's say 4, and it will add 4 of them around the rocket. And this right here, this is angle snap. So with it on, it snaps to the angles. You can see, like, as it moves around, it snaps, and this makes it easy to keep your rocket symmetrical, which is very important to keeping your center of mass centered. Which, as I sort of touched on last time, your center of mass being centered is very important. If it's not, your ship will tip and wobble, and it'll be very hard to control. So we definitely want to keep it symmetrical. I think we're going to go with a triple symmetry just because it's different and it's fun. So we'll put our couple of battery packs right up here. So we have our power storage there. Now we want to add our extra stages. So let's go back to our structural tab, scroll through all this, and get our decoupler. Put that there. Now you'll notice here in the staging area that it's been adding these decouplers, or these lines right here. And it's actually been putting them in properly, it looks like. No it hasn't. Okay, so you see if I highlight it, and it highlights the decoupler there. Now if I highlight this one up here, it highlights that decoupler. Alright, so essentially, if we know that this is what is going to detach our command pod, we need to move this down because this is the engine. We don't want it starting up and this detaching at the same time. That would be pointless. So you want to click on this and then drag it down. There we go. So now we have this engine firing at the same time that this releases that stage, which is perfect. Now we're ready to design what shall be below this. Now there are several different ways you can do this. You can just do a single another fuel tank here with for example, a more powerful engine if you wanted to do that, which does bring up a good point. We have a very powerful engine right here. This is the most powerful engine for the small, or the most powerful liquid engine on the small scale. So we don't really need an engine this powerful once we get into space. This is just going to be wasting a lot of fuel. We can actually use something more efficient. So let's just move this to the side for now, because we will want that at launch. But let's get a more efficient engine. If you look in here, one of the numbers that you'll see, and as I said, we'll explain all these numbers eventually. One of the numbers you'll see is ISP at sea level and ISP in vacuum. That is the specific impulse of your engine. Essentially, the higher this is, the more efficient the engine will be. But you also have to consider the max power, because it could be an incredibly efficient engine and have very little power. And it won't be able to push a very heavy ship very quickly. At least it won't be able to accelerate very quickly. But it can get wherever you want to go pretty efficiently in most cases if the ISP is high. For example, these atomic motors, you see ISP in vacuum is 800, whereas the engine that we were using in the vacuum is 370. So definitely some difference there. This is what we're going to go with, however. This engine is not it says ESP in vacuum 390. So it's definitely more efficient than the 370 that we had in the other one, but it's actually even more efficient than that might imply. The engine max power you see is 50, so that actually works well to our advantage in space. So let's get back to finishing our bottom section here. We'll put that back on there, and we see our staging is still set up properly. And you'll notice out here to the side it has this engine, which is this engine, and our towers, which are sitting over here. That's just to show you that you do have these other parts in here, and you can set them into the stage when you're ready. Now, again, we can do a single stage, but that's, we're doing a triple symmetry on this, and a single stage, it doesn't look all that cool, and we're looking for cool stuff. So let's go here, and we have the Mark 1 stack tri-coupler, which sounds like exactly what we need, and indeed it is. So, and we even happen to put the batteries in the right place. Those will line up pretty well with our boosters we're going to attach underneath here. And there are a couple ways we can do this. We could do some big solid boosters. Now if you're familiar with solid, the difference between solid and liquid propulsion or fuel, liquid, you can adjust the throttle, you can control it just like you could in an automobile. However, a solid engine is more like a firework. Once it's lit, you can't stop it. It's going to keep firing until it runs out of fuel. So Solid rocket boosters are usually used, you might hear them referred to as SRBs, and they typically use, like, if you've never watched a space shuttle launch, you'll see the outer boosters that are separated after a little bit after it's first launched. Those are SRBs, or solid rocket boosters. Once they're on, you can't stop them, and you just jettison them after they run out of fuel to get that weight off of your ship. Excuse me. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. We're going to add some external boosters on this one just to make it look cool. But first we need some right here. So we're already in propulsion. Let's go ahead and grab some more of those fuel tanks we had. You'll notice I still have it in triple symmetry, so when I put this under here, boop, there it goes. It adds all three of them for me. Handy. Now, just to make it similar to this stage, I guess, we're going to add another fuel tank. Actually, you know what? We're going to do another big fuel tank just because it's going to make it tall and look cool. So already we have a pretty impressive looking rocket. Now we certainly need engines on this, so we'll bring this back down and look at that. That's sexy. Okay, so now let's add this in here. And we see that our decoupler that we added above that tricoupler is mixed in with our engines, and again we don't want that, so let's click on that, move it up. Alright, so now we have all our engines firing at once. And so, as I said, we're going to add some external boosters on this. We could add some aerodynamic fins if we wanted it to fly straight sort of on its own. We wouldn't even need to use our guidance computer, more than likely, if we did the symmetry right. However, we're not going to add any fins just because we want to put boosters down here, because in all honesty I don't use the fins very often, except for certain situations. So what we need to do if we want to add some external detachable boosters, we're going to go into the structure section and we're going to look for these things. These are radial decouplers. And this is called detachment manifolds, but they're all basically radial decouplers. Now there are a few different kinds. You have this kind, which is just basic, and you can see that it doesn't stick out very far from the vehicle, and that's okay for a small vehicle like this, since we're going to be adding small boosters out here. However, for a larger vehicle, if you had, say, or even if you had, say, another setup like this with two fuel tanks, and you wanted to add that to the outside of this, you would want to use this. This makes it stick out farther, and you want to put it like right around in here, because one of the things that can happen, if the physics and the air resistance happens just right on your boosters, and it usually does, it will have the booster move, like the top of it will move out, and of course the bottom will move in as it falls down, which can sometimes cause it to hit your engines and destroy them, which just leaves the rest of this kind of floating. Or sometimes it only takes out one or two and you end up spinning around and it's fun. Maybe that'll happen this time, who knows. Probably not though. I've designed similar rockets to this before. So we're back in the propulsion here. We're going to grab this. This is a RT-10 solid fuel booster, and again, can't be turned off. We'll throw this on here, make sure we get the alignment right, move it down as far as possible. There we go. And that's just for posterity's sake, I suppose, just because I don't want the propulsion from this hitting this, even though it probably wouldn't, but who's to say. Now, you'll notice the top of these, they're just black, they're blank. You could add stuff on top of them if you wanted to. You could even add, like for example, you could move this up, add decouplers below all of these, and add a second set of solid rocket boosters below that if you wanted to. You might instead just decide to use the larger solid rocket booster, which is, as you can see, very similar to the one that is used in the Space Shuttle program. However, these don't make as much sense to me. The numbers don't quite add up to me as far as how they relate to the smaller ones. We'll get into that some other time. Now, We'll go into the aerodynamics here because again, this is just black and blank, and it looks like it would just hit the air and slow us down very much. So we're gonna come in here. We see this aerodynamic nose cone in the aerodynamic section. Pop that on there. Hey, that looks better. All right. Look at that. That's pretty. All right. Let's take our towers here, re-add them. There we go. All right. Now, it has added the towers way up here. Here are our solid rocket boosters. Let's move those up with the rest of our main boosters. This is our radial decouplers for our solid rocket boosters, so we can move this whole stage by clicking on it and dragging it. We'll move it above. Well, that's going to be the first thing that we decouple, because these are going to run out of fuel before all this, obviously. So that's going to be a stage by itself, and we'll decouple those first. Then, once all of this runs out of fuel, we'll decouple the main stage here. And finally, we'll have this decoupling our command pod, and then we'll have our parachute in the last stage. Now let's go ahead and move these as well. There we go. And I think we're about ready to launch. Our staging is set up and our rocket is looking nice. We'll change this to YouTube Tester 2. And we'll save it and launch it. And see what happens. Excuse me. Once again, we will wait for the physics to kick in the engine. And that looks nice sitting on that launch pad. Now, there used to be a tower here, and they removed it in some of the more recent updates. And I do like the new launch pad. I think it does look better. And also, that tower did sometimes cause problems. Actually, if you built a rocket that was too big, it would many times just collide into it as it was launching. But we don't have to worry about that anymore because we have a modern launch pad. Yay! Alright, so we have our solid boosters, which again can't be throttled, but we do have liquid boosters on the bottom as well. So we're going to go ahead and throttle up. And we probably don't even need full throttle, but we're going to go ahead and do it because we have all this extra fuel. I believe this is going to have far more than it really needs. We'll see. Alright, we're going to go ahead and turn our guidance computer on. This probably shouldn't be affected too harshly by it. Now, one thing that I did forget, and one thing that may cause this to be very interesting, since we separated this into 3 parts right here, they're not connected to each other horizontally, so that's going to be kind of wobbly more than likely, and since there's 2 long ones, it's probably going to start just spinning all over the place, and it could be very interesting, so we might get a good show here. 3, 2, 1. Do some rotation. A lot of rotation, and you can already see, see how it's wobbling? Yeah. And we're just going to let this go. It's going to get worse and worse until finally it just... boom. There it goes. Launching things out into the atmosphere in various directions. And of course all these pieces will go for a while and no, I went to the wrong thing. Oh well. I went the wrong way and accidentally made the debris disappear. Well, we need to redo that anyway, so because poor Jebediah died in that flight, we need to rectify that. So let's revert back to the vehicle assembly. And we know we have a problem. Alright, so we know that our problem is a structural problem here. We don't have any support in between this, so let's go to the structural section. And we have this. This is a strut connector, and this is going to allow us to make this more rigid. So we're going to come in here, set our symmetry up, and the first one will angle snap, but the second one will not, so you kind of have to do it on your own. There we go. So we have a strut there, and these are pretty strong. You don't need a whole lot of them for small vehicles. I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 just because just for the heck of it, I think it would make it better. I could add some struts between the external boosters. Struts detach on their own when you decouple a section, so there's no reason to worry about, like, if you add struts to a section. For example, if I added a strut from here to here, when I decouple this, that strut will just pop off. It's not like this will decouple and then the strut will hold it and this will just start banging up against the engine. That's not going to happen. Thank goodness. So, we fixed that structural problem. Do we have any other problems? It seemed like it was probably going to go okay. So let's do 2.1. Save and launch. You don't have to do 0.1, as you can just save the final version over and over again, so you don't clutter up your save files. For this particular save file, I think I'm gonna keep a document of everything that we've done, because this series will eventually morph out of a tutorial, and we're gonna do a bunch of fun stuff. So stick around if you want to see some cool stuff. And you already know about Kerbal Space Program. Maybe you can come back in a later episode. But for today, let's launch this and see what happens. Full throttle again, and our staging is still great. I always like to check my staging before I launch once again, just to be sure. Unless I forget. 3, 2, 1. It doesn't look like we're getting that rotation that we got last time, so definitely adding those struts has helped a lot already. Don't seem to be getting a whole lot of wobble, which is good. No overheating over here, that's also good. Everything seems to be going well. Alright, so it looks like this is going to be successful so far. However, you never can be sure. So you can see our solid fuel decreasing rapidly, and once those empty, we'll press the space bar to hit the next stage. There they go. And away they go. It's a very nice decoupling. It's spread out nicely. Alright. So, last time I mentioned that I completely missed my gravity turn. Gravity turn, I usually start at somewhere around 10 kilometers up, because that's around the time you start to get through the thickest part of the atmosphere, and it starts to get easier to maneuver your rocket. So you can see we just passed 10 kilometers there, and we're just about to pass through the very thickest part of the atmosphere, so I'm going to go ahead and start turning. Now there is one problem. We don't have a whole lot of torque on this, which means it's going to turn very slow, which actually is more realistic for this turn, so, that's okay. Now I'm going to stop this right about here, and I've noticed a problem in our staging just now, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm not exactly sure how this rocket hasn't exploded yet, as a matter of fact, because this engine is on right now. I'm not sure if it's actually shooting. Yes, it is. You can see right there. That rocket engine is on, and it is blasting propellant through the center of my rocket. I don't know how that is working. But it's okay. I'm just going to shut down engine. Alright. You can see these are almost out of fuel now. And there they went. So we'll detach those and watch that. We'll watch that stage break away and slowly fall back into the atmosphere. Or we would, but we don't have a whole lot of time again. Or maybe we do. We launched really high into the air in the last few seconds of that burn. So once again, we have messed up our trajectory. However, that is if we wanted to put ourselves in a lower orbit. We can still put ourselves in a 150 kilometer orbit fairly easily. I believe we have plenty of delta V to do so. So, we're going to go into one of the other features of Kerbal Space Program here. This is the maneuver system, and this will help you do what you want in Kerbal Space Program. So you see I click on my orbital trajectory here in the map, and it says add maneuver. So we'll hit that, and it will give us this interface. Now, there are some things on the gimbal that I need to explain. This is your prograde vector, and then the opposite direction, which looks like this, is your retrograde vector. Now, this is your velocity. These are your velocity vectors. This means prograde is the direction in which you are actually going. That is the direction your ship is moving at this moment. And retrograde is the opposite direction. These make a lot of difference because these are the directions we're going to need to be pointing if we want to speed up or slow down, obviously. Because in space, we don't have any air resistance, so we can turn our ship whatever way we want. And it's not going to make a difference as to which direction we are going, as you can see. So this right here is actually would normally be telling me how much delta V I needed in order to establish whatever it is I wanted to do with my maneuver, and it's going crazy right now because I haven't really done anything. So let's go ahead and what we would want to do if we wanted to make ourselves an actual safe orbit, we would want to burn prograde. We want to burn in the direction that we're going to increase our speed around the Kerbal. This is because when you are in orbit, you are actually just falling. You are not technically traveling, you are falling around the planet at the same speed as you are going around it. So you just keep going, and that's what we're establishing here. So you can see I've put in a maneuver here, and that's going to give us a somewhat circular orbit. And that's what we're looking for here. We're looking to be safe. We're also looking to make sure we can get him home. So we're going to have to be watching our fuel reserves as we go through this, because we did burn some of it on the way up through the rest of the rocket somehow. Excuse me. So it says we're going to need 650 meters per second of delta V, and I believe our engine can handle that with the amount of fuel that we have left. So we're going to turn our SAS off and begin to turn this blue indicator here. That is your maneuver indicator. Now the reason over here is the burn time is going nuts because I turned the engine off and it doesn't know that I have any ISP right now. So let's turn the engine back on. Whoa. And throttle down. Now it's just going to take 1 minute and 22 seconds. That should be enough fuel to do that. Now, one of the things we want to do, we usually want to do half our burn before the node and half our burn after. So we see it's going to take us 1 minute and 20 seconds, and I've started it here about 40 seconds before, just to make that about right. The reason that we do that is if we started it from right here, we'd be finishing that run around in here, which means we'd be pretty close to the atmosphere by the time we gain speed. We might actually already be heading into the atmosphere. Our inertia would be carrying us the wrong direction. So we want to go ahead and start that a little early. And the closer you keep this is the center of the gimbal here. It looks kind of like a plane again with the dot in the middle. That's the way you're actually pointing. So you want to keep that pointing towards the blue vector there, or the target from your maneuver node. You can see we just passed our maneuver node, but our apoapsis is still increasing, and that's what we want. We want it to be increasing slowly ahead of us. It's starting to get faster now, so we could actually slow down if we wanted to and make this more circular all at once. If we wanted to make a really circular orbit, we're not worried about that. I'm actually just going to stop this right here because that periapsis has just passed 70 kilometers. It's 78 kilometers now, which means it's outside of the atmosphere. And that means we've established a safe orbit. So I'll just clear out that maneuver. There's no reason for it anymore. We can zoom out and look at this orbit. And we can see that it is lower on this side than it is on this side. Our apoapsis, the highest point in our orbit, is 150 kilometers. Our periapsis, or the lowest point in our orbit, is 78 kilometers. So we can actually raise that if we want to. Just by burning prograde. We don't really have to worry about the maneuver node unless you want to be really accurate with it, etc., etc. But I'm just kind of going by ear here. So 150 kilometers is what we're aiming for this one. We're really close to apoapsis. If you want to raise okay, let's say if you're at the apoapsis and you want to raise your periapsis, then you need to burn prograde at your apoapsis. You need to move faster. So you're getting more speed around here, which is going to raise this, the periapsis. If you wanted to lower this and come back into the atmosphere, you would just burn retrograde and slow down. It would bring you back into the atmosphere. The same applies for your periapsis. If you wanted to raise your apoapsis, you would burn prograde. Excuse me, at your periapsis, you'd burn prograde. And that would move it up. Move your apoapsis up. And if you burn retrograde, it would move your apoapsis down. And you can use those tools to circularize your orbits. As you can see, I've just done. I've got 148 kilometers here, 141 here, so that's pretty good as far as circularizing our orbit around Kerbin. And we've done pretty well on our equatorial alignment here. A little off. It's a little south with it, so we're at a little bit of an angle. No big deal. Because this is just a test flight. This is, technically speaking, this is the first Kerbal's orbit ever. So quite an accomplishment for Kerbal kind. Just taking a good look at Kerbin here, you can see this amazing crater that a lot of people always say, "Alright, we've got to go there, there's got to be something there." There's nothing there, apparently. I've watched a few videos of some people who have gone there, and there's nothing there. There are other Easter eggs to be found on Kerbin. There are other space centers hidden amongst things, and right next to the space center, which we'll zoom in on that a little bit here. Whoa! That's the space center that we launched from again, right there. You can see these Hawaii-looking islands right here. There's actually a landing field right here, sort of a dirt landing field for planes, and that is not as far. It's really not far at all. It doesn't look very far from here, surely, but even on land, it doesn't look that far away. So, something we can aim for and try to land on that. So we got this guy in orbit. Yay for Jebediah! We can go back in here and see that he is very happy. Of course, Jebediah, he is a very happy person. He's always happy if he's in space. One of the things you may be noticing now, it is very dark. We are on the dark side of the planet. And it may be hard for you to see my ship right now, and I assure you, it's hard for me to see it as well. It's very realistic. If I wanted to see my ship, I would need to add some lights to it, which would, of course, use my electric charge. But, again, we weren't really worried about that. Perhaps the Kerbals did not think about that as they were designing this rocket. They did not expect to be getting this into orbit, and perhaps they expected Jebediah to die. How sad of them. But now they are thinking, you know what? We've sent a guy into space. What we should really be doing is sending unmanned things into space. So that will be our goal in the next video. For the time being, I think we're going to go ahead and end it there. Make it a short video today, just establishing this orbit. So, until next time, I'm the MagicNateball. Good luck.